I'm starting to get used to that. Now, where is...
Woo! Maybe now I can get to finally finishing my beetle and...
Ah, Hardcore Kid, there you are!
Ah! Okay, why the hell is there an unholy spirit from hell in my room?
Unholy? Dude, it's me, Hewy Toonmore!
Hewy? What happened to you, dude?
Wait, didn't Isaac tell you?
No?
Well, it's a long story, man, so you might want to sit down for this. So, are you all caught up to speed now?
I guess? So basically, your soul jumped out of your body, and now you're visiting different reviewers and doing collabs with them to try and get back into your body? Is that right?
Yup.
And so far you've done collabs with 2 other reviewers, and now you want to do one with me.
Bingo. So, think you can help me out?
Sure, dude. Anything to help a friend. So, what do you want to review?
Glad you asked. But first, you know what to do.
Of course. Cue the theme music. Hey dudes, Hardcore Kid here.
And I'm Hewy Toonmore of Hewy's Animated Movie Reviews.
And as you can see, Hewy is having a bit of an out-of-body experience. But in order to help him get his body back, and back to working on his own show, we have to do a review together. So what are we reviewing today, Hewy?
Well, remember that British cartoon you reviewed a few years back? Grizzly Tales for Gruesome Kids?
Oh, I remember it had lots of spaghetti!
I'm in no mood for tired internet memes, dude.
Sorry. But yeah, I do remember. It was an anthology series narrated by Neil from The Young Ones that covered cautionary tales that usually involved a kid reaching a grisly endgame.
Well, today, you and I will be taking a look at what could be its Canadian equivalent. Freaky Stories. Freaky Stories was an animated anthology TV series produced in Canada and originally airing on YTV. Described as a Twilight Zone for kids, Freaky Stories dealt with the kinds of myths and urban legends told around the campfire or just before bed, sometimes following each story rather faithfully and other times putting their own unique spin on them. The series ran for 3 seasons from 1997 to 2000, with 13 episodes for the first 2 seasons and 9 episodes for the third. Each episode consisted of 4 different stories, which in total would add up to about 140 stories. The look of art style and music scoring would vary from story to story. Sometimes they looked more realistic, other times they'd look more angular with thick outlines, and sometimes they'd look more rough and sketchy. This was specifically done to keep viewers' attention spans, and the first season alone incorporated 20 different looks.
So basically it's a different animator for each segment.
Along with a different narrator. Some of them include Neil Crone, Alison Court, and even Don Franks. The series also features live-action host segments featuring 2 animatronic insect puppets, a cockroach named Larry D. Bug, and his sidekick, a gassy, dim-witted maggot named Maurice.
Oh, what was that?
Your food.
Looks like 2 rejects from A Bug's Life.
They hang out in the dirty kitchen of Ted's Diner, a 1940s-era diner setting staffed by Rosie the waitress, voiced by Jane Eastwood, who's heard but never seen. She only appeared in the first season.
Hey, Rosie, the jukebox is busted.
Hey, get a grip, can't you see I'm mopping here?
Anyway, Larry and Maurice introduce each story and get into antics before, in between, and the end of each one. Honestly though, their brand of comedy gets real old real quick, so I usually just skip their parts and get straight to the stories. Heck, when the series started airing in the United States as part of the Three Friends and Jerry show on Fox Family in 1998, the host segments with Larry and Maurice were cut out entirely.
Good call. Speaking of Hewy, as much as I'd love to review all 140 episodes, my laptop can only handle so much freakiness. So, how about I review 3 episodes, and you review 3 episodes?
Sounds good to me, dude.
Alrighty. Roll the footage!
One thing about this series is that, like any good spooky campfire story or urban legend, each story begins and ends with the same phrase.
This is a true story. It happened to a friend of mine. This is a true story. It happened to a friend of mine.
This is a true story. This is a true story.
A true story.
It's a true story.
True story.
True story.
True story.
This is like a true story.
That's curious. You know, I once had a friend of a friend of a friend who went to a beach once, and he got to ride a humpback whale. Unfortunately, the humpback whale ended up humping him back.
That was in poor taste, dude.
You expect good taste from this show?
Just move on.
So let's start talking about the episodes. And being the cat person I am, my first pick is cat food. The segment begins with the narrator, Patty Pringle, talking about how her neighbor bought an expensive grilled salmon, only for the cat to get a hold of it. Seems alright, so far. Except there's something very wrong with the sound mixing. Sometimes the sound effects and music drown out the narration, so you have trouble hearing what they're actually saying.
Luckily, Mrs. Taylor came outside and caught that stupid cat in the act.
I mean, the narration isn't Morgan Freeman worthy, but they could have tried mixing it out better. So thanks to Piss and Boots here, the fish is ruined. But Mrs. Taylor and her son Emerson try to cover up the cat's mess by decorating it in parsley. I'd hate to see her on Hell's Kitchen.
Sharon, you're scaring me. You look like the female version of fucking Hannibal Lecter. Put your fucking tongue in and concentrate.
So Mrs. Taylor has her party, and everyone is enjoying the salmon, until Emerson comes along with some bad news.
Mom! Muffy ate the fish and now she's dead!
Ooh, that can't be good.
Thinking that the fish is poisoned, we get a montage of the guests vomiting up diarrhea and being rushed to the hospital to get their stomachs pumped. We then cut to the post-party cleanup where it's revealed that the cat didn't die from eating the fish. It died because Patty Pringle, our narrator, accidentally ran it over in her car and left it on the porch with no note and no warning because she didn't want to spoil Mrs. Taylor's party.
Wah, wah, wah.
Damn it, Hewy! After Feliday, I thought we were done with all this senseless cat murder.
Hey, don't blame me. You chose the story, which is actually one of the most well-known urban legends.
This segment is based on the old poisoned pet legend that dates back to about 1946. In most versions, the pet is a cat, with some variations that feature a dog or a bird. The foodstuff eaten by the animal also varies. Baked salmon, wild mushrooms, hors d'oeuvres, cold-cut sandwiches, and salmon mousse have all been mentioned. However, the ending is always the same. The pet is found dead, the guests think the dinner is poisoned, the hostess is universally hated, and either the neighbor or husband show up to tell them the truth, a little too late.
This version of the legend makes it sound like Patty deliberately didn't tell Mrs. Taylor what happened to the last minute, making them all think the fish was poisoned in order to sabotage the party, as she did seem to sound a little jealous while she was telling the story. That's kind of messed up if you really think about it.
Well, that story was deeply upsetting. What's your first pick, Hewy?
Well, the first story I chose was Accidental Cannibals. This story deals with a family in the fictional Old Country village of Oshek who were occasionally sent gifts from their Uncle Dimitri who lived in America. Being foreign, the family usually find the gifts Uncle Dimitri sent from America rather strange. One day a package arrives along with a note, but the note is accidentally eaten by a goat. The package itself contains a large jar full of a brown powder.
Mama unscrewed the lid. It smelled good. She moistened the finger, dipped it in the jar, and tasted the powder. Spicy.
Mama declares the powder to be a kind of cooking spice and uses it on the family's chicken dinner that night, which turns out rather delicious. In fact, the spice is so good, families from all over Oshek and even the next village ask to use it in their dinners too. Unfortunately, when the holiday season rolls around, the spice runs out. But the family decides to just write to Uncle Dimitri asking to send more. But the very next day, the family receives a package from Uncle Dimitri's son, Leon, containing a solid gold urn, and a letter informing them that Uncle Dmitri had sadly passed away and that his dying wish was that his cremated remains be sent back to his family in Oshek.
Leon had sent Uncle Dmitri on ahead a couple of weeks ago.
So yeah, that brown powder wasn't cooking spice, but rather Uncle Dimitri's ashes.
Blah! But why would they send the urn and the ashes separately? And why in a spice jar of all things?
Well, remember that note that came with a jar that was eaten by a goat earlier in the story? Turns out that note was to tell them that the urn would be coming later.
That's what happens when you trust Federal Express, I guess. And again, the episode ends with the whole village vomiting. Man, there's more puking in this show than in that Family Guy episode where they drank
Don't you dare!
What, you don't want some Epicac?
No! This segment is based on the ashes mistaken for food legend, which dates back to at least the 1940s. It was widespread in the years just after the end of World War II, when European families in war-torn areas commonly received food shipments from relatives who had fled overseas, and powdered food products were fairly new at the time. In many versions, the confusion is caused by the ashes having been packaged in some sort of makeshift container, such as a reused food tin. The food item for which the remains are mistaken varies as well, from an instant drink to a condiment, spice, or even flour that's baked in bread or cake. In some versions, the explanatory letter does not arrive in time because it gets delayed in transit, while other versions feature an identifying letter that accompanies the remains, but is written in a foreign language and the family eats the remains before the letter is translated.
Well, it goes to show that sometimes you truly are what you eat. My next pick is from episode 2 of season 1, and it's called The Suspect. Hang on, I need the appropriate music for this. Our story focuses on a traveling salesman named Joe, living in a weird 1940s retro noir style future. It's like if you put Blade Runner and the Maltese Falcon in a blender, and then the blender exploded and shot parts everywhere. As the rain comes down, Joe stops at a cafe parked next to a weird-looking police car. I don't know how you expect to do a pit maneuver with that thing, but I digress. Inside the cafe, Joe meets an attractive robot waitress and a RoboCop who gives him some worrying news.
The slasher just broke out of the joint. The slasher? Wasn't he the guy who... Yeah.
After finishing his cup o' Joe, Joe decides to hit the road, but not before the robo-waitress points out something in his car, and suddenly Joe is in a high-speed chase with the cop. It is worrying times for Joe. Did the waitress rat him out? Why would the cop be chasing him? Well, once Joe pulls over and gets out, it looks like it's curtains for Joe, until it's revealed that, holy swerve! The slasher was hiding in the back seat the entire time.
Talk about a close call.
This story is based on the urban legend, The Killer in the Back Seat, dating back to the late 1960s. In the original story, a woman is being stalked on the road by a mysterious car flashing their high beams at them. It's like if you're driving down Clinton Road here in West Milford and some pranksters are playing tricks on you. Believe me, it's happened to me more than once. But in this case, the pursuing driver was chasing them down to warn them that there was a psychotic man or killer in the backseat of their car. And every time the killer rose from the backseat to try and stab the driver, the car behind would flash their high beams to try and warn them and scare the killer back into hiding. In some versions, the driver stops at a gas station and an attendant working there takes them out of the car upon seeing the killer in the backseat and takes them into the building to call the police. As far as the changes in this episode goes, it's not all that freaky. It actually makes it seem like the waitress was accusing Joe of a crime he didn't commit. But it's understandable when you see a cop flashing his lights behind you and you get very nervous. Like you hope you don't commit any traffic violations like driving over the lines or going 5 miles an hour over the speed limit. Despite that, at least we get a happy ending for Joe as he gets a transfer to a desk job. It's a lot safer.
This wouldn't be the last time we see Joe the salesman, as he would reappear in 2 more stories, The Vanishing and Femme Fatale in Season 2, and the tale of the backseat killer would be retold again in the Season 3 episode, The Getaway. Anyway, my next pick is from Episode 10 of Season 1 entitled The Moving Cactus. This story centers on a woman named Edna who desperately wants to become a member of the Horticultural Society, but can't grow a plant exotic enough to impress the membership committee. So while on vacation in Mexico, she becomes ecstatic when she's told by the manager of the hotel she's staying at about a rare plant she might be interested in and that he'd take her to it.
Unfortunately, she danced right on the manager's little chihuahua. Poor Edna.
Man, so much animal abuse in these stories. I think I know why the show got canceled. PETA got a hold of it.
After a long burro ride, the manager takes Edna to a small cactus covered in red speckles that surprisingly starts to twitch and move. Edna, excited about this discovery, decides to take the cactus back home with her and show it to the membership committee of the Horticultural Society in hopes that they'll finally accept her application.
She thanked the manager profusely, hugging him and falling to her knees, which was where his new chihuahua puppy had been sleeping. Oh well.
Oy vey. When she arrives back home, the cactus continues to grow until it reaches the ceiling of her living room, all the while still twitching and moving. The day comes when the membership committee arrives at Edna's home and are shocked and amazed at the sight of her giant twitching cactus. But just when Edna is offering the committee a tray of party sandwiches, we soon discover why the cactus was twitching, as suddenly it grabs Edna in one of its arms, bursts open, and a huge mass of slithering red-eyed snakes comes spewing out into the living room.
Snakes. Why did it have to be snakes?
The story ends with Edna having gone crazy from the experience and now spends her time in the botanical gardens offering party sandwiches to the flowers growing there.
And that's how Audrey 3 was made. But damn, where'd all the snakes come from?
Most likely a mother snake laid eggs inside the cactus and they eventually hatched, growing inside all this time and causing the cactus to move when they wriggled.
Ugh, and I thought spiders growing inside the walls was gross.
Funny you should say that. This segment is based on the Spiders in the Cactus urban legend, which dates back to the early 1970s in Britain and Scandinavia. In the legend, a man and his family go on vacation in Mexico where they buy a cactus and smuggle it back home with them. But one day when the man sprays it with a water bottle, causing it to shiver and shake, he calls a professional who tells him to get him and his family out of the house immediately. It's later revealed when the fire department arrives and torches the cactus with a flamethrower that it was hollow inside and filled with giant tarantulas who had been growing inside and were just about ready to burst out from the cactus. In most versions of the story, the plant is always a cactus or a yucca, but in some versions, instead of moving, it hums or whines. Usually there are spiders inside, but other versions feature scorpions instead, or in the case of the Freaky Stories version, snakes. The country the cactus is smuggled from is always either Mexico or Central America. Sometimes the damage is contained by the authorities, while in other versions the owners aren't so lucky, with the baby spiders hatching at night and attacking while they sleep. Whatever version, the story always serves as a warning about the dangers of smuggling certain plants or foods into the country, because if you're not careful, it will literally come back to bite you in the end. However, while I do somewhat enjoy this segment, my only nitpicks are all the chihuahua abuse and the part where the cactus grabs Edna looking really cartoonish and unrealistic.
Oh, these creepy crawlies are giving me the shivers, Huey. But let's move on to something that's bound to rattle some bones. The hook. Now this segment is really unique. Why? Because it's a doo-wop video.
The boy's name was Frankie. His true love was Annette. It happened on a Friday night. They were parked in his Corvette.
The story focuses on a couple named Frankie and Annette in a Corvette at Lover's Lane. And my God, your hair is stupid.
What, you got something against pompadours? Because if you do, Elvis Presley and Johnny Bravo would like to have a word with you.
I mean, yeah, I know it's meant to be a parody of old 50s styles, but have you ever gone to the barber and asked, "Hey, can I get the beefy 5-layer burrito?"
Just upset because you're losing your hair.
Maybe. So as they're making out, an APB comes out over the car radio and announces that a deranged killer with a hook for a hand has escaped from an asylum and is now on the loose at Lover's Lane. Frankie laughs it off, but Annette, either she needs a system reboot or she's about to vomit up her organs like in the City of the Dead.
Watch out for the hook. Watch out for the hook. Watch out for the hook. Watch out for the hook.
But when Annette sees a hook-shaped shadow in the side view mirror, she's frightened out of her wits and begs Frankie to take her back into town, which he eventually does. But when Frankie brings her home and prepares to open the car door, he suddenly passes out from shock. Why? Because there, hanging off the handle, is a giant hook.
classic.
Yeah, this is definitely the most infamous urban legend of them all. The story of the hook dates back to the 1950s, where a couple hear about an escaped killer who slaughters his victims at Lover's Lane. Some of these stories have mutated into cautionary tales about teenage sexuality. In this case, had Annette not demanded to be sent home, they could have either been murdered or had gone all the way. So 2 crises were averted. As far as the hook in the door handle, legend has it that the killer had been trying to get into the car, and the hook was inadvertently ripped from his hand when Frankie sped off. Well, in the end, you can definitely say there's more than one way to get hooked.
You suck!
I see some things haven't changed in the 3 years I was gone.
Well, I'm done with my picks. What's your last pick, Hewy?
For my last pick, from Season 3, Episode 8, entitled The Babysitter. The story begins with a teenage girl named Shelly who happens to be a real scaredy cat. So one day, her friend Jennifer asks Shelly to take over for her babysitting job, looking after the Thompson twins while she goes on a date. Not those Thompson twins! Anyway, Shelly's hesitant at first, but ultimately decides to take the job. That night, while the twins are asleep in the room upstairs, Shelly's watching TV down in the living room when the phone rings.
Dun 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 dun!
Shelly answers the phone, but hears a creepy voice on the other end say,
Have you checked the children?
Dun 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 dun!
Scared out of her wits, Shelly hangs up. But thinking it was a practical joke by Jennifer, she soon calms down. But then the phone rings again.
Dun 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 dun!
Again Shelly answers, and it's the same creepy voice from before saying,
Have you checked the children?
Dun 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 dun!
And again Shelly hangs up the phone before ripping it out of its socket and locking and barricading every door and window in the house. Then she begins to think that maybe she should check on the children. But just as she gets onto the foot of the stairs, the phone in the study begins to ring. Once again, Shelly answers, and once again the creepy voice says,
You haven't checked the children! You haven't checked the children!
Shelly decides that she's had enough, hangs up and calls the operator, asking them to trace the call the next time the phone rings, still thinking it's Jennifer playing a prank on her. But just as soon as she hangs up...
Let me guess, the phone rings again? I'll take that as a yes.
But this time, there's only a dial tone on the other end. Thinking it's a wrong number, Shelly breathes a sigh of relief and hangs up. But then the phone rings again! Shelly answers, yelling at who she thinks is Jennifer on the other line to stop calling. But then she hears the voice of the operator telling her that they've traced the call and that...
We've traced the call, said the operator. It's coming from a second line inside the house. Get out now!
Somebody's in the house! Oh no!
So Shelly runs upstairs, grabs the twins out of bed, and bolts out of the house, running as fast as she can. And from then on, Shelly, now a lot braver, babysits anybody, anywhere, in any house.
As long as there isn't more than one phone line.
Well, at least it was better than the When the Stranger Calls remake.
This segment is based off the urban legend, The Babysitter and the Man Upstairs, which dates back to the 1960s and is possibly based off the 1950 murder of teenage babysitter Janet Christman. Sadly, in most versions of the story, the children upstairs are long dead when the phone calls begin, and sometimes the babysitter is murdered too. However, there are versions where the babysitter rescues the kids and the prowler is caught and arrested by the police, but not before telling the babysitter,
Call you later, baby.
Call me on the line, won't you call me any time? Come on, Hewy, aren't you a punk rock fan?
And sometimes the caller is revealed to be the two children prank calling the babysitter from upstairs, which is actually what is suggested in the Freaky Stories version. Like the hook, this is one of the most infamous urban legends, with it being adapted into several different movies, including Black Christmas in 1974 and When a Stranger Calls in 1979.
Leave me alone! Jill, this is Sergeant Sacker. Listen to me. We've traced the call. It's coming from inside the house.
Not gonna lie, that scene always gets me. The original story deals with the insecurity felt by adolescents as they are required to accept increasing responsibilities while making the transition to adulthood. The teenage girl is not simply left alone to fend for herself, but she is also made responsible for the safety of other children. In the Freaky Stories adaptation, it shows Shelly's change from a scaredy cat to a sort of hero, even if it was just a prank. The experience taught her to be brave in the face of danger, to do what she is afraid to do just to keep the children she was responsible for safe. So in a way, the Thompson twins did Shelley a huge favor. As long as she never finds out they were the ones who pranked her. And that covers my picks. So kid, what do you think of the show overall?
What did I think? What did I think? Well, I really like the idea of the show basing episodes on old urban legends and crazy conspiracies. Sometimes it can be entertaining, and other times a bit cringy. I wasn't a big fan of all the animal abuse, and they could have done a better job with the audio and the animation in some parts. Also, they obviously had to soften up on some of the violence because kids show. But if you ignore some of the shortcomings, these are some well-done stories that can give viewers a simple but effective look at some of the freaky tales of the past.
This series introduced me to a lot of the urban legends I'm familiar with today, though honestly, not every story feels like it's earned the right to be called freaky. Some of them can be very immature and gross, and the musical ones, aside from the hook, can be annoying. But I feel some of the best stories are the spooky ones and the ones with an uplifting ending. Different art styles does accomplish its goal by keeping your attention by changing things up now and then, and fitting the mood for each story that's told. All episodes have been uploaded to YouTube, so go check them out whenever you have the chance, whether it be full episodes or just each individual story. At least then you wouldn't have to deal with Larry and Maurice's parts.
So if you're a fan of weird stories like Grisly Tales or Mobile Mysteries, be sure to check this show out as well. So a hardcore hit for freaky stories.
So kid, now that the review is over, you think you might be able to help me track down where my body might be? That is, if you have the technology available to do so.
Sure. I have a controller that I use for my BattleBots, but I recently upgraded it to become a personal teleportation device.
That's convenient. But can you use it to track down my body?
I don't know. I never used it to actually track down people before, but we'll give it a shot. Damn, I can't seem to find it anywhere. It's like there's something mystical blocking the signal.
I should have known.
Hey, you okay, man?
I'm sorry. It's just, I've never gone through this long of a hiatus before. 3 years. 3 years I've been off the reviewing grid. I thought I had a chance to finally come back, but 3 co-reviews with 3 different reviewers later, and I'm still nowhere close to finding my body, if I'm even still alive. I feel like I'm going through sensory deprivation every second I remain in this floating, disembodied form. I'm scared, kid. What if this really is the end for me? I'm not ready to pass over yet, man. I'm just not ready.
Don't worry, man. I'm sure we'll find your body out there somewhere. In the meantime, I can send you to another reviewer who can help you out.
Alright. It's worth another shot, I guess.
Now who do you want me to send you to? Think real hard, man. Is it someone that you know who may have the skill to locate your body? Whether it be technology or magic?
I think I might know someone. Do you think you can get the coordinates for a user called Roshi?
You mean that blue pony maker renegade you did the countdown with one time? Yeah, I think I can get you there. Hold on. Okay, I got his coordinates, although he calls him Roshi VA now.
Great! Thanks, kid. I owe you one. Oh, before I go, I need you to do me one more favor.
What's that?
After you send me to Roshi, I want you to contact Isaac and get him to send you the contact information for Big Jack Films. If whoever did this to me is who I think it is, then we need to prepare ourselves in case he tries this on any more of us. I refuse to let what happened to me happen to any of you guys. So I think it's time we band together and take immediate action.
Don't worry, Huey. We got your back. Here goes nothing!
See you at the movies. Anime movies, that is. I hope.
Don't give up hope, Toonmore. He'll be back with us soon.